Our planet is our greatest resource. It provides us with food, water, safety, comfort, and anything we need. So why does it seem as if its future is in limbo? That's what I'm hoping to explore in this video. Welcome to the politicization of the Earth. The Earth is our greatest resource. It provides us with food, fresh water, safety, comfort, and anything we need. So why does it seem as if its future is in limbo? That's what I'm hoping to explore in this video. Welcome to the politicization of the Earth.
67% of American adults believe scientists should have a major role in policy decisions, but many of us view science as separate and apolitical. To quote the great philosopher Plato, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. But is science used to find the truth in making political decisions, or to gain power by political players? Philosophy used to be seen as less abstract and more rational, making it have a greater impact on science. But in modern times, we view science as separate from our ethics and philosophical beliefs. But science is actually affected by a multitude of factors. For example, bureaucracy, finance, philanthropy, and ethics.
All right, so I'm currently awaiting a phone call from the Minister of the Environment for the province of Saskatchewan. And so I've sent him 3 questions already, which you'll hear very soon, but I'm sure that whatever he has to say will be very informative and a great addition to this project. So my first question is, why do you believe there is often a disconnect between environmentalists and the government?
Well, I think there often can be a disconnect, just in terms of how environmentalists or the environmental community approaches issues versus government, in part because I think the focus of government and members of government is in many cases more dispersed or more,
it's a little bit broader.
There's more issues to focus on. So I think as governments, environment is an important issue, but we also have to balance off the environment with other priorities within government, whereas I think environmentalists or the environmental community or environmental scientists, if they're more focused on a single focus or a single issue, I think, we serve different communities or we serve different constituencies.
Sure.
And so that can often cause a disconnect between different groups.
All right, thank you. And so that answer is kind of similar to my second question. So that is, should scientific evidence take priority over other factors, for example, the environment or the economy or personal beliefs when you're drafting environmental policy?
I think scientific evidence is important when drafting environmental policy, but I think for policymakers, for members of government, again, kind of going back to that first answer, because we serve a variety of constituencies and have a number of areas that are under our jurisdiction or under our authority, I think it's important that we balance the environmental evidence with those other considerations. So often in times in government, it really is a balancing act between ensuring that policies are reflective of not only the evidence, but also, policy decisions have implications on others. And so I think it's always a balancing act between ensuring that we are balancing off the priorities and the needs and the evidence when it comes to any type of policy.
All right, thank you. And so my last question is, why do you believe something so unifying as the Earth has become so politically polarized?
I think in part because even if people can agree on what the problem is, I think people have different perspectives and they have different ideas and beliefs in terms of what the possible solutions are. So I think that has caused some polarization. I think as well, I think that just when any type of policy decision that any government is going to make, there are going to be people that agree with that, and there's going to be people that disagree with that, even if we can agree with what the challenges are, or what the problem is. I think because people bring different perspectives, they did bring different backgrounds, and they bring different ideas when it comes to what are the possible solutions to those areas. And so I think when you have a society, when you have government structures, organizations, and that are made up of different people with different backgrounds and representing different points of view, that can often lead to polarization in the public discourse and polarization in the political debate. And I think, the important thing for policymakers is trying to see past those differences and, find the areas that you can agree, find some areas that you can find common ground. And also, though, going back to kind of, I think your first question is looking also as well at, what does the evidence say? I think that even if the vast majority of scientists agree, say on the environment, agree with what the problem is, I think it gets harder for even the scientific community to all come to a consensus on what the solution is to that issue. And so even within that very kind of narrowly focused group, not narrowly focused, but even, that group that is very focused on a single issue like the environment or like climate change, even with that community that may agree on the problem, there's probably not that same uniformity when it comes to what the possible solutions are to that issue. So I think when you then bring that out to the broader community, and add in people that have other areas of concerns or priorities, or just as policymakers, I'm the environment minister, but I also have other hats that I wear within government, and so I think the more people, the more views that you bring into the discussion around an issue, I think that just leads to, whether you call it polarization or whatever the word would be, you then get more points of view, more opinions, more ideas, and that leads to maybe that less uniformity when it comes to what the potential solutions could be.
Okay, thank you so much for talking with me today.
There have been many instances where the politicization of science has been used for nefarious purposes, beginning with in 1660, when the Royal Society restricted its membership solely to economically independent men. This is the first instance of us seeing science being limited to a very small perspective. Even today, we continue to see very few women and minorities in positions of power within STEM fields. Galileo's evidence of heliocentrism was viewed as heretical in his society, which valued biblical and classical philosophical thought. A very thought-provoking quotation from him states that Scripture teaches us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. We could discuss if we, as a Catholic school, are affected by our religious biases when speaking about scientific evidence that can sometimes directly contradict biblical thought and preachings. A very modern example of the politicization of science is the Harper government's muzzling of scientists. It was Environment Canada protocol that stated that answers to reporters' questions for government scientists be crafted with communications team. They created a policy of one department, one voice, which directly contradicts the idea that science is formed through a multitude of perspectives.
So originally I may have set out to find out why the Earth has become so politicized, but I've realized that the two are linked. One cannot exist without the other. There are ways that we can treat scientific consensus in political debate with the respect it deserves, but politicians need to consider it a multitude of factors in drafting policy, as that is the best way for them to truly represent the best interests of their constituents. Thank you for watching my video.